United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks for being here. It's November 28th, and this is our town hall meeting with students. And it's being recorded, so for everybody in the audience, and obviously it'll be available for everybody to see. And it's been a while since we've done one of these. We were doing them on a kind of, not just with students, but with staff on kind of a cadence. And then, of course, like many things, COVID came and we got out of the habit of doing that. But I want to thank Mira for setting this up and for staff for helping make this happen. So with that, Mira, I'll turn it over to you. I'd like to have some opening statements.
So all I want to say is that in preparation for this town hall, one thing we did was we sent out a Microsoft form to all students grades 6 through 12 in Charles County to see if they had any questions they would like to ask the Board of Education. So we got a total of 195 responses from students all across the county, and I was able to go through all of those responses and find the most pressing and commonly asked questions from students. So today we have a few students who are representing all of the students in Charles County who asked these questions, and they're going to come up and ask the questions to the Board of Education where you guys can answer their questions. So we can honestly just jump straight into it with the first question. So I'm going to invite Christian up here, our Thomas Stone liaison, to ask.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
So this first question is, what motivated you all to run for the Board of Education, and what is the hardest part about being a board member?
So, I'll start, and people can jump in. So, you know, I keep it simple, and I use the same word when anyone asks me this, and it's opportunity. So I wanted to help give opportunity to kids that I didn't have when I was your age and younger, and a lot of kids around me didn't have. And it stems from a number of different things. You may have heard of something called an ACEs test, ACES, Adverse Childhood Experience Test. And you take that and you can score yourself, but I score like a 6 or 7 on that test, which, you know, if you look at outcomes of a lot of those kids, a lot of them aren't very favorable for various reasons. So I just wanted to do what I could as someone that was involved in the community in a lot of different areas to work with other people to help give kids opportunity that once they graduate, they can use to go on for further studies or into the workforce. So, and the second part of that, the hardest part about being a board member, I would say, I don't know if it's so much hard, but as it is sometimes frustrating, is that with everything there's a process, and you have to follow a process, even though you kind of know inside maybe what the end game is going to be. You have to just follow the process and let everything play out. And patience for me wasn't always easy. So having the patience to follow that process to the end is sometimes that you just you have to learn to deal with. Next, anyone? Now I'll look to Ms. Burrow.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I guess I would love education. As an educator, I love children, and when I retired, I was not ready to enter the world of retirement. I felt that I still had something to offer, and I felt that the best way for me to be able to do that was to try to become elected to the Board of Education, to apply what I know and what I love to the bigger picture. Even though I have to say, when I did become a board member, it's totally different than working in the system. But it did give me a background of the big picture of things. What has been the hardest part for me, I would have to say very honestly, is trying to please everyone, because that will never happen. So I have to make peace with the fact that whatever decision that I have made, I made it with honesty and integrity, and I knew within my heart, I felt that was the best for children.
All right. Why did I run for the board? Is because, one, I have a beautiful young daughter in Charles County Public Schools, but that's not the main reason why I chose to run. Is because I learned that there were so many homeless students within our school system, and I wanted to be a voice for them. And because I come from the projects, we tend to never have anybody speaking for us, and I felt like this is my opportunity to be the voice for those that were not able to be a voice for me. So the hardest part is to kind of, you see such a great need in so many different areas. And as Mike stated, there's a process to everything. And we know it's going to be a change, but it may not change on your journey or during your term. But, and then just to her point, everybody wants you to help them in their situation, and all you can do is what you can with what you have to work with. And I believe and I feel that I have made myself very accessible and available to quite a few people, the staff members, the students, teachers, because I am an educator as well. It was very important for me to make sure that they understood that I understood. We may teach different subjects, different things, but our walk is similar. So I just wanted to be that guide to hold their hand and provide a safe space for them to share. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Ms. Wilson?
So I'd like to share with everyone that I am a very proud graduate of Charles County Public Schools, and which afforded me the opportunity to go off to college, go through ROTC, and serve my country for 20 years. And in the process of serving my country, I had an opportunity to live in different communities. And one fundamental thing that was very clear to me in living in communities, poor communities, when I did humanitarian support internationally, the importance and value of education became clear. So when I came back to Charles County, having had a great experience for Charles County Public Schools, I wanted the same opportunity for those that are currently attending. I started engaging with the school system. A lot of the staff knows me for 8 years, because I used to be the education chair of the Charles County branch of the NAACP. And I would often sit in the back of the room and actually observe the board meetings, the entire board meeting, not just the public process. And it's there that I realized how complicated education had become. And so also with the volunteer work, often involving other kids, it was suggested to me, well, as much time that you're spending with the school system, why don't you run for the Charles County Board of Ed? And so it's been actually a wonderful experience, working with the staff, working with educators, the support staff, the teachers, the administrators, and the parents. The most challenging thing that I'm having to deal with as a board member is the polarization, the politics. I mean, it is unprecedented times, they say, but it has been a bit overwhelming. I think you guys have heard me say this, and I'm a strong advocate of this, is speak in such a way that people listen, and listen in such a way that people want to speak. And I will tell you, we as elected officials, collectively, we need to work on that for the sake of the kids. And so I will always continue to support education, because it's such, like as Mike has alluded to, it's opportunity. And I've certainly, gotten a lot of opportunity because of education. So thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Wilson. Ms. Abel?
So my story is a little bit different than everybody else's. Began 18 years ago. I was a mother of 4 young children in the school system. I too am a graduate from Thomas Stone. I had been a Sunday school teacher, youth group leader, Boy Scout leader, Girl Scout leader, swim team president, and was PTA president at the time. And I felt like as a parent, I kept hitting walls. And I felt like my children kept hitting walls whenever they questioned something, whenever I questioned something. At the time, I was dealing with what I'm going to speak openly here, what I would consider a difficult principal at the time at my children's school. And every time as a PTA president or as a parent, I asked questions, I was always told, because that's the way it is. It's in policy. Well, and I would ask, where is it in policy? And no one could show it to me. I opened up the newspaper. Yes, back then we used to read the newspaper that you got in the mail. And there was a announcement in Jobs, I think it was in Jobs, that the Charles County Board of Education was looking to fill an open position. So there was someone that had been elected for this position that couldn't fulfill their 4-year term. So they were taking applications, which is the process here. If someone can't fulfill it, the rest of the board takes applications and interviews people and chooses someone to replace it. And that's what I did. And I didn't tell my husband or my children I was doing it. I was just, God was speaking to me because I was going through this and feeling this, and then boom, there it was in the newspaper. So I applied. And next thing you know, I was appointed to it and had to tell my husband and children this is what we were doing. So that's kind of the story of how I got started. I did it, like I said, to be a voice for the parents and students, to bring transparency and communication, explain policy, possibly look at the policies and change them at the time. I really pushed for televised board meetings, faster minutes, social media accounts. Our BYOD policy, pushed for that, and bringing the technology and, like I said, the communication to the public, more accessible. I will piggyback on everyone else. The most difficult thing is hearing from everyone in their stories and all the different sides. You might think there's only 2 sides. There's not. There's probably 100 different sides, and you can never make everyone happy. And no matter what decision you make, you just have to make what you think is best in your heart and in your mind, and knowing that you're not going to please, 50% of people are going to be mad at you anyway, no matter what decision you make. So you just have to do your best.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, Mayor, for holding this. You certainly are representing your constituents very well, so thank you. My name is David Hancock, and I'm a board member, and I first started 4 years ago. And initially I am a father of 3 students that attend school in the county. At the time, my wife was a full-time educator in the county. She's a part-time educator now. I've been very active in their county. I've lived here my entire life. I wanted to be a voice of reason. And I was pleasantly surprised when I was elected that everyone here is a voice of reason. I hope that holds true as we transition into boards, but every one of my 6 colleagues right now is a voice of reason. We've worked as a team, even when we didn't agree. Behind closed doors, it wasn't always pretty, but in public, we were one. And that's something I'm proud of, and I think all of us are. I wanted to be a voice of reason. I think I've held up to that, as I think all of us have. I just want to do what's best for the system. There's a lot of polarization. I know Ms. Wilson mentioned that word. When you turn on the news, you'll see some real wild board meetings where groups are fighting and screaming at one another. I wanted to not allow that to happen here. And at least to this point, we have been successful with that.
The night's young.
It's very young. We've almost gotten through 4 years. But, and what's the hardest part about the job? There's really nothing hard about it. People have hard jobs. A student your age, that's a hard job. You're trying to keep a good GPA to get a good scholarship, to get into a good college. Teacher that goes to work every day in a stressful environment, that's a hard job. A parent that's working to make ends meet, that's a hard job. Watching a child that's sick, that's a hard job. This job has obstacles sometimes. And as been said by everyone, and I'll say it again, the polarization, the politics, that we are politicians in a sense. But we try not to let it infiltrate us. We come from various political parties. I'm one of the more conservative members on the board. And there's some more liberal members of the board, and we're best friends. We don't look at things through the lens of politics. But sometimes we are under that lens of politics. And sometimes we have to put that noise aside and focus on the reason why we are here. And that can be a struggle. Thank you.
And what do you do in your spare time?
I'll kick off and we'll try to be a little speedy on this one. So I actually retired last year. I worked for the Navy for over 38 years. I retired last year, at the end of August. And in my spare time, I like to work in the yard. I like to garden. I like to go to the gym. That takes up most of my time. We still have a honey-do list in the house that will probably never get completed. But, honestly, prior to retirement, I didn't have a lot of free time. Between working and being a board member and being involved in the community, there wasn't a tremendous amount of free time. So doing things around the house or close by, I'm able to, I don't have to drive anywhere. I can just do this. And I'm a huge soccer fan, so this is my nirvana right now with the World Cup going on. So I like watching a lot of soccer. So my free time. We'll go this way this time.
Well, I still work full-time. I have worked in the nonprofit world for 20 years. For the last 3 years, I have been the Director of Finance and Operations for a nonprofit called Maryland Crime Victims Resource Center. We offer free legal services for any victim of crime throughout Maryland, no matter the crime, from identity theft to homicides. We help represent them in court and provide resources for them. Other than that, and Board of Ed, I like to hunt, fish, crab, kayak, garden, outdoorsy stuff. I also have a Harley that I love riding, and spend time with my grandchildren that I have now. So.
Don't have a whole lot of spare time. I have 3 kids. My 2 oldest sons are big into travel baseball. That occupies most of our spring, summer, and fall, but I'm pretty involved in that, and I really do enjoy that. I do. If I have one hobby, I enjoy riding horses. I own a couple of horses. I also own a farm. I have a lot of cows. I love cows. I'm surrounded by more cows most days than I am people, and it's a good thing because it's kind of a yin and yang effect. I'll be around a bunch of people one day, and I'll be around a bunch of cows, and they don't really say a whole lot. So it's a good thing. And then I do own a small business in town where we sell our farm products at. But no, for fun, my kids are all. My oldest is in high school. I have 2 in elementary school, so they occupy most every ounce of spare time I might have. So.
Thanks, Mr. Hancock.
Thank you.
Well, you heard me say earlier, I am retired, but I'm also a mom and a grandmother, so a lot of my activities revolve around my family. But I also am involved in several community activities. I'm a member of the McConkie One-Room Schoolhouse. I'm the secretary for that organization. I belong to the Retired School Personnel organization. I'm treasurer of that organization. The Charles County Scholarship Fund, secretary for that one. So those kinds of things keep me busy. But in my spare time, I enjoy crafting. I love to cook. I love the beach. We have a place near the water that I love to visit, whether it's summer or the winter. So now that I will really not have responsibilities, I do plan to travel. So that's about it.
Well deserved.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I don't have spare time, unfortunately. I run a nonprofit full-time for work, the Restaurant Association of Maryland Education Foundation, as well as I have my own nonprofit called Phenomenal Young Women, where we support young women in 3 pillars of academics, entrepreneurship, health and wellness, and social skills. I'm a CEO of my own company. I'm part-time now doing that since COVID. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. And most importantly, I'm a mom. That's what I'm most proud of. Unfortunately, in 2012, I lost my own mother. I never knew my dad, so I invest a lot of time in making sure I spend as much of my time focused on legacy, because a lot of you guys have heard me say this 1,000 times, and we learned this in COVID, that tomorrow's not promised. So that's why I spend a lot of my time in the community giving back to people and support them in a way where if something was ever to happen to me, I've done the work that somebody would do the same for my daughter. So that's what I do. I don't really do anything else other than that. Spa scattered throughout the month or two, but I'm always in the community doing something. So.
Thanks, Ms. Pamela.
So I'm pretty lucky. I'm a retired Army officer, and so I do a lot of advocacy for veterans and environmental and agriculture issues. I'm on the board for the Port Tobacco River Conservancy. We're heavily involved in preserving and protecting the Port Tobacco River. Along with Mrs. McGraw, I also serve on the McConkey one-room schoolhouse. I love anything dealing with local Charles County history. I think there's a lot of opportunities to do some historical preservation, just a lot of volunteer work. I also serve as the chairperson for the Board of Visitors for University of Maryland Eastern Shore, which is one of 4 HBCUs in the state of Maryland. That keeps me extremely busy. I know Mr. Lucas going back to the days of the what they call the poker circuit. I love to play poker. I own a boat. Anyone interested in a 31-foot sea ray? It needs washing and waxing, and make me an offer. I'm a beekeeper, and I love to travel.
All right. Next question. How are you?
How are you? What has the board been doing to prioritize mental health and wellness within schools?
So I'll just give you a very brief answer, and then I'll turn to Dr. Navarro. This is something that has been in our minds for a long time, even before COVID, and everyone seems to point to COVID for a lot of things. But we as a board, and I appreciate Mr. Hancock's comments before about working together, we've always advocated to our funding source, which is the commissioners, the need for psychologists and counselors in the school system to help kids. And COVID, we good? Okay. COVID really put a spotlight on that. Dr. Navarro, you want to add anything?
Can I?
Oh, please, Ms. Wilson, yeah.
So you and I had this conversation because I saw the questions before Dr. Navarro speaks up and hopefully not passes out in the floor. You know, mental health has been a challenge for many, many years. And what I said to the board member is this morning we had both the school board members, we had the county commissioners, and we had legislators. And I know that the EACC union president is here, this is a very contentious issue for me personally, because I think this is a great opportunity for students to do advocacy, because we need a plan, and we need to not only obviously ask us as board members, how are you prioritizing, but we need to exploit opportunities. When we have those three components of legislators, county commissioners, and board members in the room at the same time. And we need to come up with a plan, and we need to come up with measures of success. I know you guys recall that this question, I think, at the EAC legislative breakfast came up. And my response was, I am tired of being asked this question without a plan. And I'm very frustrated because COVID, as Mr. Lucas has alluded to, has, it's exasperated the problem. And so I applaud the student board members for having this town hall. And this is a great topic, not only to challenge the board members, but to go back and have a conversation about coming up with a strategy that invokes both not only board members, but the county commissioners and the legislators. Because right now, we do not have a plan. And there's a way, as you can see, that we can cordially have this conversation, but all the parties that impact the outcome need to be at the table at the same time. And so I pointed out to you this morning that at no time during the legislative breakfast that mental health came up at all. And that was very frustrating. So I encourage you, the student board members, the student population, to encourage all of our elected officials to come up with a solidified plan and to fund it. There is major personnel shortages, pipeline issues, that there's no incentives that are really being pushed hard. And so I saw this as an opportunity that if you're going to have these town halls, advocate for this stuff and make sure that you include all of those stakeholders that can impact this decision.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson. Dr. Navarre, sorry.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to piggyback on some of what she shared. To that point, it's a great question for the school system. However, it's an awesome question holistically to the county, because we continue to hear, and I'm a parent too, so I'm on that side as well. And I have a student is in the same position, that we have to make sure we can have all the mental health resources inside the school systems and the facilities. When students go home, we have to still make sure that there's still services outside of the school that they have access to as well. So my whole thing that I advocate, when you heard the list of things that I do, is I've been to the table with all the parties in the county. I've been over a year fighting for mental health overall, because sports is always the #1 thing that we focus on as a county, but we're missing all the other pieces to approach you all as students holistically with your challenges, especially the impact COVID has made on our kids overall. So that's one of my greatest focus as a nonprofit leader, because I serve young people and I hear from young people, and when they're not at school, they're with me. And when they're with me, I want to make sure I have other resources outside of school when school is closed that you all can have. But it's so important for you guys to show up at the table, to be your own voice. We do it constantly. But it's time for you all to sit at the table as well, to share what those what those challenges are. Because sometimes when they hear from us 24/7, they feel like we're making excuses because you guys are not saying anything. So this is a great opportunity for them to hear the question being asked. But what does that look like from your perspective, because mental health looks different for everybody. So this is where the plan comes in place. What does it look like and how can we support on those different levels? So keep that in mind as well. Sorry.
No, it's good. Thank you. So, we do have, programs, and Dr. Clark, you can speak to that are in place in the system.
Yeah, so I would say a couple of things. And I really do agree with the board members that student advocacy in this area is extremely important. Over the last couple of years, we've been incrementally increasing behavior interventionists, counselors, therapists in the schools. We fight a battle of time, right? So I think we have a question around how do we support providing services, finding people to fill the positions, because beyond the teaching industry, the healthcare industry is also having huge workforce shortages. So for example, we've increased behavior interventionists, but it's taking us a lot of time to find therapists to come in and behavior specialists to come in and work in our schools. The other thing that I will say is that we've increased programs in the schools and training to teachers and staff. And we are always developing the capacity of our staff to do their work. But that is a lot of work. And so fundamentally, when you have national organizations saying that, we have a huge number of young people and adults that need mental health services, I think we have to fundamentally shift the construct of what the day looks like for young people and how we work more closely and in different ways than traditional ways to bring in folks that can really support our students during the school day. The one thing that I think is important that we're looking into is how do we are bringing more people to work inside our schools during the school day. As Ms. Battle Lockhart mentioned, the reality is that if we don't provide some sort of services in schools, many of our students will not get them outside of schools. And if they don't have comprehensive and strong health care, they will not get them there as well. So it's a challenge, and I acknowledge that it's a challenge, and I think we need to continue to work on not just increasing the behavioral specialists in the school systems, but fundamentally talking about how we provide healthy communities in a well-rounded way. And from, if you're high school, from 7:30 to 2:15, there is a lot that is being asked of schools and staff to do during that time, and we need to sort of rethink how that space and time works out. But thank you for that question, because it is a shifting of realities in what we talk about when we talk about developing and educating youth these times.
The next question is, how is our school system inclusive of students from various backgrounds, including LGBTQIA+, different religions, cultures, ethnicities, etc.?
So let me speak for myself first. One of my things, going back to opportunity, has always been to make everyone feel welcome and invited into the school system. And during this past term, we developed an equity policy. Ms. Battle Lockhart and I have worked on that with members of staff, and they took it over. As a board, we adopted Hispanic Heritage Month and Asian Pacific Heritage Month, and I still think there's some room for other groups. And I think it's all about, again, making people feel inclusive, and that comes down to having things in policy so that obviously no one is ever discriminated against. I don't know if any other board members want to comment.
I just wanted to share that
Yeah.
Dr. Navarro just created the diversity, what's the title? I always get it wrong. Ms.
Community
Royster?
Engagement and Equity Director position?
Yes,
That's right.
yes.
That's right.
For the very reason to ensure that we're not only connecting and making sure we're approaching it in the school system, but we're connecting with those outside of the school system as well to bring awareness of community organizations that focus on specific things that individual races or backgrounds may be seeking that may not be available into the school system. Because once again, everybody wants it in the school system, but sometimes it's available outside. So just bringing awareness, if it's not available here, it is available within the community. So looking forward to seeing more of that particular role and department of what that's going to bring to the table to really address this particular question.
I would just like to add also that our staff is required annually to have professional development regarding anti-discrimination, and as well as becoming more culturally sensitive. So that is something that the board members were involved in a year ago, as well as now all of our staff. So.
That's very true. Thank you, Ms. McGraw. Any other comments? Sure, Ms. Wilson.
I would say, I mentioned to you all that I, at one point, served as the education chair, and I used to sit back in the back of the room, and I clearly remember the board meeting where the discussion of LGBTQ came up, and it was, and this is my interpretation, finally somebody asked the students what they thought, and the response was amazing. And I think that's what's crucial here is it's a challenging topic to talk about. You have to practice what you preach. We can write all the policy in the world, but if you don't act accordingly and make everyone feel inclusive, then it's a waste of piece of paper. But I will tell you, the student representatives represented the school system quite well. And how about asking us how we feel? We're not having problems. It's the adults that's having the problems. And whether you agreed or disagreed, I thought it was profound by engaging the students on this topic on a very challenging and having open discussion. And I was very impressed with how the students responded once they were asked.
Can I add something?
Sure.
As we talk about this particular question, I want to make sure, I'm not sure if you have, but I'm sure you may have, to make sure that we're including, when you all come to the room, the special needs population. Because we talk about color a lot, but we don't talk about holistically what inclusion looks like, because there's a lot. Just, we can go outside in community. Seniors is a part of inclusion. So we want to make sure that their needs are being addressed too from the student population. And I've asked that question a couple of times with other student board members of how are you hearing their voices? Are you getting information from them? Because they need their voice at the table as well, especially for those that may not be able to come and partake. But those that can, please make sure that they are a part of the process as well.
Thanks, Ms. Battle.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Hancock.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I just wanted to weigh in a little bit on that. And to me, you know, the LGBTQ plus issue is something that can be a little hard to deal with at times, just because people have strong feelings one way or the other with it. But in my opinion, it's what I teach my own children. Every person, whether they are similar to you or dissimilar to you, deserves to be treated with the same amount of respect that you expect yourself. And that goes across the board, whether it's LGBTQ plus, different religions, cultures, ethnicities. we have a standard that every student, no matter who they are, what they look like, what they think, deserves to feel safe, comfortable, and treated with respect and dignity when they're in the school system. And that's something that we can, it was mentioned, we can pass all the policy that we want, but ultimately that kind of falls on you guys, and you guys are, it looks like most everyone here is in high school, and you guys are the leaders in your school community, and you guys kind of set the standard with that. And it's just treating people the way that you would want to be treated. And that sets the tone when students who are the leaders in their school system not only do that, but demand that, then it becomes expected. And I think you guys play a major role in that. And then also, as it was mentioned before, communicating with us, what else can we do on our end to help you with that? So, thank you.
I'm TJ. I'm from La Plata High School. I'm the student liaison. And I'm wondering what the justification behind the new BYOD policy is and why students can't bring their own devices for instructional use anymore. Thank you.
So you heard me say in the beginning, I retired last year from the Navy. In the Navy, they had this wonderful, big air quotes here, thing called NMCI, Navy Marine Corps Internet. And if anyone has worked in the Navy, you can share the frustration that many people have in having, hundreds of thousands of people with all the same computers. And, a lot of the same frustrations, quite frankly, that maybe you experience sometimes in terms of being slow and why I can go out and buy something that is a lot faster. But there's a lot of reasons why those computers have to be standardized. And I will point to you and back to Ms. Thompson to talk about that, because really, again, this is my experience. A lot of it has to do with security and accessibility, and I think we can talk about that and then talk about some other stuff as well.
Yes, Board Chair Mr. Lucas is exactly correct, and there was 4 major reasons why we decided to transition to sunset BYOD. The first being the inequity of technology access in our schools. When I started in 2018, I would visit schools. In some classrooms I would walk into, some students would have access to MacBook Pros, fancy iPads, to do their schoolwork, where others were sitting there scribing on with paper and pencil. I think it's onus of us as a school district and in my position to ensure that we were able to at least provide every student a device. Of course, when I started, I was very ambitious and asked for the funding to go one-on-one, and I was kind of told, we don't have the funding for that. Unfortunately, due to COVID, fortunately due to COVID, we were allotted funding to provide students a device. While certainly it may not be as fast as a device that you may bring in, it may not be as fancy. However, it is a standardized device that we've tested. We've uploaded all the programs that are needed, such as testing applications that don't allow for pop-ups, all of our instructional technology applications, as well as other guiding technology applications such as Land School Air. When also, speaking of inequities, even in some of the classrooms I would walk into where students brought in their own iPads in an advanced art class, those students were able to access applications to do their drawings on, where the other kids were not. And that's something that's really personal and passionate to me. My own colleagues don't know this, but back in '07, I wrote a doctoral research paper on the digital divide, and that is the gap that persists between students that have access to digital tools to learn versus those that do not in low-income communities. So this is something very near and dear to me as well. We should be the ones providing what you need to come to school to learn. That should not be the onus on the student. I strongly believe when you come to school to learn, we should be providing you the tools, and we should also provide you the resources. Also, we were allocated upwards of $4 million through local, state, and federal funding during COVID to provide students a device as well as internet access. I think we should be responsible taxpayers, stewards of taxpayers' money, to make sure that we are doing that. And I think what happened here, the lines were grayed between, oh, we're putting a ban on cell phones. The cell phone policy is not changed, it just got enforced. The reason the cell phone policy was sort of laxed is because we relied on some students bringing their cell phones to the class, but the cell phone policy did not change. I do applaud, I know earlier board member Jen Abel spoke to her pioneering bringing BYOD, and that was back in the day when we had nothing. We didn't have devices, we didn't have laptop carts, so that was an innovative solution to meet a need. But I think that's our job. Let us sweat the bullets, let us get the gray hair on how to get the funding to provide you the tools that you need to be successful in class. That should not be the responsibilities of your parents to figure that out. That's our job. And also, lastly, it helps us to help prevent harmful internet content. We're able to put different filters on the devices that we provide. Certainly, if you're in a class with your own cell phone or iPad that has a data plan, we are not allowed to filter or alter that in any way, shape, or form. We're not even allowed to provide technical support for a personal device. And I used to come from DOD. Even every DOD employee that walked through that door had to be provided a device that my team provided them because of that. So a lot of this, and I've visited some of your schools. Christian, I came to Stone on the 20th of October, and I spoke to you about it. This wasn't a control aspect. It wasn't to make your lives miserable, and I do realize some of the decisions I make do frustrate you, but just as board member McGraw said earlier, as long as I know I'm making a decision with integrity and honesty, if for the benefit of most students, I'll continue to make those decisions. Certainly it's not, I get it's not great. Who wouldn't want to bring in their own MacBook Pro or their iPad or their fancy phones to learn in class? I get that. But let me sweat. Let me have that gray hair and anxiety, which I do every night, to figure out how to make sure you have the tools that you need to be successful. And that's why we came to that decision.
Any comments from board members?
That's her.
Yeah, I understand that, for some of you that may not, be the answer that you wanted to hear, but that's kind of the reality that we live in. It's not going to stop once you're out of high school, because you'll be at jobs and you'll want to do things a certain way or use a certain device, and they're going to say, no, we really can't do that. You have to use what we provide to you.
As he mentioned, I'm so sorry,
Yeah,
but
please.
even if you go into the workplace, I've worked in the federal government for 7 years. You couldn't even bring in a USB. You couldn't even bring in a CD. So I'm just being honest. We're lax kind of. When I got here, I was shocked that it was just wide open. When you go into the workplace, you're in for a rude awakening of the things that you can and cannot do. So I know the conversations I had with some of you let us have that ability to be, make those decisions. But when you go into the workplace, it's way stricter than what we do here, truly. It really is. You can't even log in a USB or a CD-ROM, and you have to use their equipment, and you can't even work remotely. You have to come onto their network. So a lot of what we're doing truly is preparing you for the real world, and a lot of it is protecting you from dangers that you don't know. And just so you know, during COVID, cyber crimes increased exponentially, and they targeted K-12 students because they knew you were at home. So we wanted to ensure we were giving you devices that help provided the supports that you needed. So a lot of times you get mad at your parent. I'll be the parent you can get mad at that makes those decisions that you don't like, but it is for your own good. So, sorry. Get off that. Bam.
Another question the students had was, how do you plan to address the growing violence in schools, and how are you ensuring staff and students feel safe?
So, unfortunately, in society in general, it's not, most of things that happen in school, but we've seen an uptick in a lot of places. And when you come to a school, it shouldn't be a place where you should have to worry about your safety. But you see things, and you experience things, and you see them in the media, and you read about them. And it's a challenge sometimes. I'll certainly admit that. we set up programs so that, and they have worked, so that get the students to see something, say something program. That has worked in making sure that something small doesn't escalate into something bigger. And I know that you see fights and things like that in school. And again, we have interventions so that hopefully these things don't happen. But I think what's important to understand too is that this is, we don't control what comes into the building, right? We don't turn anybody away. And a lot of this stems from things that happen outside the school. And to the points earlier, you know, we have to work holistically. And you hear that word a lot, but it's true. You know, it's not as though the school is this perfect insulated bubble where everyone can come to that. But we have to work holistically to make sure that programs and services and not are available outside of the school. And I'm not just talking about things like that you might think to help kids. Oh, you know, why do you feel this way? But recreation centers, activity centers, you know, things where look, we were all young. Sometimes you got a lot of anxiety. You just need to work off some energy, okay? And if you can do that in a constructive way, then hopefully that can take away from feeling more anxiety at school. Again, to talk about specific things that we've done, Dr. Navarro.
So I'll sort of start, and then I'll look at Dr. Jones also to chime in a little bit. What I will say is, unfortunately, in these times, we beefed up security. We beefed up our security. We're enhancing our security cameras. We are making sure that entries to schools happen in a very precise manner, that entry only happens at certain points in time, that we don't have strangers come into the buildings. But we also depend on students and staff to be able to tell us when something is happening. And that communication is pivotal for us to have relationships with our students, that they will come and say, something is not quite right with somebody, or something doesn't feel right, or we heard something, or we saw something. And that's how most of the time we're able to intersect an issue and de-escalate it before it happens. Frankly, a lot of it is also, what do we do with a young person who has made a mistake or who needs some support, and sometimes is extensive support, to be able to guide them back to living a well life. And then the other issue that we have in society is that you can go to Amazon and buy a taser gun for 25 bucks. And so that is the reality that we're living with right now. And when we bring young people, thousands of them, into a building, we're constantly thinking about that. That is a thing that, you know, we think about that, but, you know, as our director of safety and security says all the time, safety is everybody's. Everybody has to be in it, and everybody has to sort of be engaged in it. Our incidents with weapons have increased, but our incidents in terms of fights have not increased tremendously from previous years prior to COVID. And I think it is important for us to continuously support abilities for adults to be able to de-escalate situations, the ability for adults to be able to have strong relationships with students where they feel comfortable to be able to tell us how they're feeling or what they see around the schools. Dr. Jones, anything else?
Sure. Just a couple things there. You touched on it, and so did Mr. Lucas. In the see something, say something, the relying on students, those are the biggest things that we really have to go on. The question talked about the growing violence in school, and so sort of like what Dr. Navarro mentioned, the numbers, the quantity of violent kinds of discipline violations are not exponentially higher than before, but it sure seems like it because of the severity of some of the violent acts that you've seen and hear about, the intensity of them. We get that. I mean, the fact that people will still video record these very dangerous acts and all, sometimes it does make it feel that things are growing to an out of control place, and that's not necessarily the case, but it doesn't make anybody feel any better. We understand that, and so we do go back to things like relying on students, because in the grand scheme of things, there are so many more of you all than it is us. There are 27,000 of you. There are almost 4,000 of us. And so when you think about it, in most instances, when things are heading to a bad place, most often students know about it before the adults know about it. When it's brewing, when it's headed that way, all the chatter, it's kind of, you know, the back and forth, that stuff is growing most often before the adults know about it. And so the see something, say something opportunities, we used to have the tip box, if some of you may remember that, and so we're talking with the Sheriff's Department about maybe bringing something like that back, where there are opportunities to let an adult know that there's a problem or something is about to happen, and to be rewarded for your assistance with that. Those are things that we're looking into. We certainly encourage all of the typical proactive measures with, you know, having conferences with students, having conferences with parents, certainly all the interventions that the adults are, when the adults are made aware of them, the things they try to put in place, the behavior plans and those sort of things. Those are pretty important for us to keep doing. The restorative practice sessions, the mentors, when we are able to assign students to with a mentor, pair students up with a mentor. Those are things that we highly encourage of all of our administrators and our teachers. And then when things do go wrong, we are encouraging our principals to you know, be progressive with how you be fair, be progressive with how you are disciplining students. But at the same time, for the most egregious acts, we are at a place where we are telling our administrators that it's time that we be sure that our students are getting a very clear message as to what we will and will not tolerate, because we need to keep our schools safe. Again, because we need to keep our schools and students safe. And so we will do those things, but we certainly rely on you all, back to that if I can. We rely on the students to see something, say something, opportunities that you all have when you hear about something going on. They are super helpful to us. They absolutely allow us to sometimes get involved before it gets to a place where it is violent or something violent does occur. And so we encourage you all to do that. And as student voice members, as leaders, encourage your friends, encourage your peers, or maybe discourage them from getting involved in these things that we know are going to be problematic. Because you all are leaders in your role, sometimes your friends may listen. You never know. So don't give up on that. Discourage someone from, or at least set an example, lead by example. If you see something going on and your friends are getting ready to gravitate towards it, you all might be the ones to say, you know, we ain't got time for that. Let's keep it moving, or what have you, and then move on to an adult that might be able to intervene and get involved and help us to you know, reduce some of those things. So again, you all are our biggest help with that. Again, keeping in mind that we are outnumbered as the adults. You know, you all outnumber us by a long shot, and so we need your help. And we hope that we have trained, and with the parents' help, we hope that we have done our best to kind of train and guide and grow you all up from little kids to help us to be a part of the solutions and other problems.
Ms. Wilson, then Ms. Battle-Walker.
So this is another topic, along with mental health, that I think a lot more stakeholders collectively need to be at the table. It affects not only the students, but it also affects the teachers. I think we need to have a continuing and deeper discussion about setting expectations. Say, for example, there's educators will say, within our building, there is a culture. And I think, I'm going to say the C word, I think I am a huge advocate for restorative practices. I've actually been trained, participated in it. But I have to say this, I think it's time to have consequences, especially for those when students have been given an opportunity. There needs to be consequences. When you go out into the workforce, you can't You can't tell your employer that the F word. And how many of you, how many students have seen on a recurring basis bad misuse of language? I mean, and it's about setting expectations, and it's about setting standards. And so I love this opportunity to have this discussion about, yes, we do need to provide services. We do need to provide supports. The other thing that I would add is we need to get the parents involved. We need, I'm not telling the parents how to parent, but parent. And to provide support mechanisms. And in those instances where there isn't great parental or guardianship at home, then obviously we need to provide those services. Earlier in the discussion, the question was asked, why did you run for school board? And I had mentioned this, the school system is the backbone of the community. And I'm not saying that because we're sitting here in the school system. It's a reflection of the community. And so we have to advocate nothing but excellence. And so we need to be, I'm looking at you as the student board member, but we need to be advocating about what we want in our building, in our school, that you want to be able to walk down the hallways and not be bullied, or watch your teacher be disrespected, and that we got to go through a whole bunch of drama to get it rectified. It's a balancing act. It's not easy, but I will tell you that it is very disheartening for me to watch on Facebook or TikTok, anytime somebody wants to share a fight, and when you see a young person attacked, and when it's grouped attack, I don't think that needs to be celebrated. I don't think it needs to be shared. And I think you as students need to speak up and saying, we want a positive learning environment. And this is another topic that you're having these town halls, that you need to have deeper conversations about this going forward, both for yourselves and then also for the teachers. And it's a hard topic. And a lot of your classmates have a home life that is not conducive. And let's provide those services, but let's also set expectation and enforce it, with fidelity.
Well, this one is a heavy one for me. I'm not going to make it long and drawn out, but the question that I have for you as leaders is, why is it not a safe space to go process? What will it take for it to become a brave enough space for you to speak up? And to Ms. Wilson's point, and to school system has a choose kind, whole initiative. When do we really stop posting quotes and really living them and applying the quotes? We're always throwing an initiative at something somewhere always, but we don't see the impact of what it's supposed to be doing within our system. And if we're asking you to choose kind means that student that is going through whatever that thing is that that they're going through, but you're too afraid to tell the story. That doesn't mean you have to go tell everybody in the school. It's just find that safe person. It doesn't have to be the principal. It has to just be that one person. All you need is one person to be able to create a space for those students that feel that they've gotten to this point where they're blowing up. That's been sitting inside them for so long because of what the result of outside of school. That's not inside school. And if it's inside school, it's because you guys are doing it to each other. And to her point as well, when you find it okay to sit there and record somebody harming, bodily harm on someone else, why is that okay to your community. Why is that? Have you asked that hard question? That's the hard question. We have to have the hard questions, especially because you all are like most of you guys are high school students. You're getting ready to transition out in the world, just like my daughter next year. It's time to have hard conversations of why we do what we do. And when you figure out the why or hear the whys, bring them to the table so we can walk you and talk you through. Because we don't talk about rejection, do we? We don't talk about how to deal with rejection, do we? We talk about bullying all the time, but rejection leads to bullying. Image leads to bullying. A lot of different things lead to bullying, but we don't sit down long enough to have conversations because we feel like we're going to be judged. So now we have to get real about the real conversations, but we can't help you until you're ready to help yourself. We can have all the services in the world, inside the school, outside the school. But if you're too afraid to follow the see something, say something rule, how can we help? How can we hinder people from, block people from coming in the door? Because some of y'all know they're coming in the door. You just didn't say anything because you're too afraid. Tell us what we need to do to support in creating safe spaces in all these buildings that we have for you to go into. And if we're doing something wrong, or you see something wrong, or if a door is unlatched when it's supposed to be latched, it doesn't have to be hard. It can be something simple. But until we start having those types of conversations and say, this is what I'm dealing with, because until we get the bodies that's required for us to serve all of you all, we're going to have to figure out how to do it within what we have. That's why I always push. I'm with y'all. We can't do it all in the system. There's 600 plus, including churches, nonprofits in this county alone. There's no reason why you could not get support that you need outside of school. But there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to speak up and say that I'm in need of whatever that is. And it don't always have to be something negative. It could just be support in trying to figure out how to go to college or what I need to do if it's not here. Does that make sense? So those are the conversations that you all have to have with each other first and say, we really want to be honest about what mental health looks like for us. We want to be honest because we just seen 5 fights. We just seen, let's not talk about, I get emotional about, I've lost my friend to suicide. She lost her son to suicide. When are we going to have a conversation about before that happens? Why are we waiting? Because we know already. We know, and we waited until it was too late. Can we stop waiting until it's too late? And I just put it on public. Y'all know me. If you don't have nobody else, start with me. Start with me first. Because that's where I think the problem is. You don't know who you can talk to and who's going to keep you safe. You won't know until you try it. You don't know until you try Mr. Hine. You don't know until you try Ms. Thompson. It don't have to be anybody in your school. It just has to be somebody. That's where we start.
The fact that this is a question that you guys asked is, I think, is very reassuring. It's good to see students concerned about this because we see it. We get the confidential emails marked confidential from Shelley every time a major incident happens, and it does seem like it happens quite a bit. And for you guys to bring the question up, it's a good feeling to see that you guys are concerned about it. When you hear of students bringing weapons to school, that's something that really, it hurts to see because even if that student had no intentions of using that weapon, if you're 16 and 17 years old, you've effectively ruined your life by doing that. You're at the age where it can go in your personal record. That's going to haunt you for the rest of your life. Not you guys. You guys are the leaders of the school that are concerned about this and want to find a solution, which is amazing. But I feel, we have great steps in place to stop something once it's known that it's there, once you know there's a weapon there or something has happened. But I always ask myself, what could we do to stop someone from thinking that's a good idea to do that? The fact that someone is okay with bringing a weapon, a taser, a knife. A lot of steak knives have been in schools this year. Look-alike guns. A BB gun's a gun. The fact that someone thinks that's a good idea, what can we do to address that? Because even if that student doesn't use it, that's going to haunt them for the rest of your life when you go to get a job and that's on your record. That's hard to explain. And I also have been thinking it'd be a good idea. You know, you guys are the ones that are in the school system all the time, and we set up task force all the time. We just had the BYOD task force. I think it would be a good idea to set up a task force with you guys and get your ideas. What can we do? You guys, you know, I was in high school 20-some years ago, and there were fights in schools, but we didn't have the technology for where it was recorded, and thank God I never saw a weapon brought to school. So it is a different world. So it would be nice, I think, if we could set up a group to get your input and work with you guys as leaders in your school to see what we can come up with to prevent this from not only escalating, but prevent it from starting in some cases. I think that would be a good idea. Thank you.
Comments from you guys? This is starting to be a two-way. By the way, we've got about 20 minutes left, so if you've got questions to ask, if there's something more pressing than others. You have your hand up back there, but you need to come up to the microphone.
I'm Josiah Johnson. I'm coming from St. Charles High School. I'm a 10th grader. We talk about safety in schools and stuff. Like, school has never felt like a safe environment. And, you know, all the years I've been attending any school in this district, county, however you want to put it. I mean, I guess you could say students themselves don't feel safe. So, you know, they do resort to bringing knives, weapons, whatever. And I've seen cases like that. Like, at the end of the day, we're children. Like, you know, I can't really explain it, but from personal experience, when I lived in Virginia, I was in elementary school. I was in first grade. I was being bullied continuously for like a long time. And, you know, the kid had threatened to like bring his dad's big knife and he was gonna stab me and all of this other stuff. And I had talked to adults before, but, you know, it was brushed to the side because I was a child. You know, there was nobody to hear my voice at the time. So I took it upon myself to defend myself, and I brought a knife to school to, you know, show that I'm protecting myself in this way. Like, you know, if you have a weapon and I'm just hands-free, it doesn't make me feel safe. And it got to the point where the child had like came up behind me and told me like, you know, you remember what I told you? And I pulled it out and he screamed. So, you know, administration had got involved. It was this whole big thing. And a good thing was that my vice principal had listened to me and, you know, understood where I was coming from as a child that was being bullied and, you know, picked on for a long period of time. I feel like school systems are more reactive than proactive. Like, current situations occurring, like fights and stuff, like I've seen people my age get thrown to the ground, slammed. Like, a girl lost her teeth because a resource officer had slammed her on the ground. We're talking about children, young adults, the future. You know, being handled aggressively, spoken to aggressively, it doesn't help us with anything. So when we get on the topic of mental health, we're not being spoken to with respect, you know, the first go around, because I've had moments where I've talked to administrators and, you know, just expressed my opinions or, you know, thoughts about the school, and it wasn't taken greatly or, you know, whatever, but I mean, that's my opinion. Not everybody's prone to it. But I just feel like talking to our administrators, our parents, whatever, about things to be productive instead of reactive. Because, you know, it's, I would like to hear more questions from the board to students, because I feel like we're the ones giving you questions like, well, why is this that way? Why is that? But we want to hear your input. And I put in an application for, think legislative advisor, something like that, to make change and bring change to the school systems.
Nice.
And have a say in, what goes on and what rules and regulations are set and passed as, a representative from my school and somebody that's been around a few times and has, experienced those situations.
Thank you.
So I just want to applaud you for that. That was a very well thought out statement. And you mentioned something, use the word legislative, and as has been said before, not just this school system, but every school system in the state, we're obliged to follow certain guidelines that are established by our legislators. And having a voice like yours to talk to them, and to Mr. Hancock's point about setting up a group, I think that would go a long way. When the people that make those rules hear from students like you, that compels them. I mean, they're making decisions thinking they're doing the right things, but when they hear a story like this, they may realize, well, maybe what we did wasn't in the best interest of all the students. Because in your case, you're someone that was a victim for a long time, and whereas people that pass the laws, they're worried, but honestly, not so much about you, but more about the people that are committing these acts. And not that we shouldn't worry about them. I mean, like you said, they're kids, but we have to find that balance that serves everybody. I just want to applaud you for what you said. Very good. Spent a lot of part.
I wanted to do the same thing. I honor you for being bold and brave enough to share your story, first of all. Second of all, I said find whoever you feel comfortable, but don't stop at the first one if the first one don't follow through. So I didn't want you guys to take it like the first place you're going to go is going to be the person. It takes a minute to find that person for you as an individual. So I'm so proud of you for being in this space right now. Thank you.
So my name is Taliana Singleton. I go to St. Charles, and one of the things that I was wondering is what can be done about the quality of our food? Because a lot of people complain that they're not full or it's just nasty. So what can the board do to help us?
I'll say that you're not the first person that has asked that question. So I'll give a brief statement and then turn to Dr. Navarro. So, your school lunches are subsidized by money from the federal government, and as such, we're limited in what we can offer and still have lunch affordable. And with that, I will drop that little thing on your plate.
So, I have children in the school system, and they let me know what they like and they don't like about school lunches. And last year, the number one issue when we surveyed students, and also one thing I want to make sure you guys understand, sometimes we pulled out surveys. So for the calendar survey, for example, our next school year, the second largest population that responded were students. So expect us to be pushing out this board, and I know likely the next board has always said, and your SMOB continually says, how do we ask students what they think about X, Y, Z? And so I'm hoping that we do a better job of including you and your voice through it. But last year when we did a survey around what do you think works really well in the school system and what would you like changed? Overwhelmingly, the number one issue that students brought up was food. And we work at it. Behind you, you have two amazing supervisors who every day spent their time thinking about food, and they saw this question coming up and they wanted to be here. So I will defer to them and Karen Acton, who supervises that, to tell you a little bit about how we work within our constraints of what we can provide and how we're constantly thinking about how to offer more options and choices for you.
questions better than I can. You know, we have constraints. The overall picture is that we have constraints on what we can serve and the quantity. It's based on USDA guidelines. The calorie requirements are set by grade level, so there's constraints there. But we are concerned, or we are committed to trying to do the best we can to provide food that students will like. But I'd like to ask Crystal to maybe, or Bill, one of you to speak a little bit about what we've done.
I'm the
One
big
of you.
mouth in the department, and I'll be as short as I can and give you as much information. I could talk to you for hours about this, okay? Because it's what I live every day. When you say there's not enough food, look, the system is designed to feed a student, an average student, about 1/3 of their daily calories. So that means about 650 to 900 calories for a high school student. The average high school, anybody playing any kind of sport after school is going to burn about 3 times that amount. I can't make the federal government give me more money to give you more food, okay? The meal that you're paying for cost me about $2 to make. Now, that seems like a pretty insignificant amount, but we only get $4 to do it, and I have to pay the people that work in the cafeteria. That's the quantity part of it. What we see in the high schools most of the time is that the students don't take everything they're entitled to. You don't know how much you're entitled to. You're entitled to an entree, to what you would refer to as sides, a fruit, a vegetable, and a milk. That's what you're entitled to. And in high schools, you get an extra half cup serving of fruit or vegetable, right? We run 13 different programs, and sometimes they get mixed in my head. As far as the quality of the food goes, let's take a Papa John's pizza against the Big Daddy's pizza we serve in school. The Papa John's pizza is made with flour and sugar and yeast and pepperoni and tomato sauce. Our pizza, on the other hand, because of federal regulation, is made with whole wheat crust. The cheese is not really cheese, it's artificial cheese, okay, because it's lower fat, it's skim, it has lower salt content. A number of years back, some of you may remember that we did away with tater tots, right? Yeah, tater tots went away, and tater tots came back like 2 years later. But they came back without salt, and when we tested them, the only comment we got from students was, "They'd be great, but they need salt." Well, that was the reason they took them away, is there was too much salt. We have a myriad of regulations that we have to comply with. If the food is nasty, that's not something we can take action on. We need something a little more specific. The pizza is greasy, the vegetables weren't, they were overcooked or undercooked. We need something we can take action on. Just saying nasty just doesn't tell us anything. So here's what I would suggest back to you as the students, that your student governments get together and pose questions to us. We'll be glad to come meet with you and discuss the program with you. Light, I mean, like it doesn't weigh enough, or it's not cooked enough?
Not cooked enough.
Okay. Okay. Part of that is the whole grain, and it becomes difficult to get all the students served in the time frame that's allowed, and sometimes they will try to rush things. If it happens consistently, every school has a manager. You can ask to speak to the manager. She'll take your input, but you got to give her more than nasty, right? You got to tell her what's wrong. It's undercooked. How come? Why? We use an oven that's called a combi oven. It's a combination heat and steam. It cooks more efficiently, faster. It doesn't brown things as well. So it may not look cooked, but it is, okay? We don't serve any raw products. All our meat comes in pre-cooked, so there's no such thing as undercooked food. Now, vegetables are a different story. But we've also dealt with, over the last couple of years, a lot of supply chain issues that you may not be aware of. Mr. Hancock might be aware of them in his world, but we've had trouble getting beef, chicken, peanut butter and jelly, chocolate milk, right? We just went through a 2-month period with no chocolate milk. So we had trouble getting peanut butter and jelly last year. How ridiculous is that? By the way, the peanut butter and jelly we serve is made with reduced sugar jelly and whole wheat bread. So it's not the same Uncrustable you can buy in the grocery store. It's good, believe me. I've eaten a few. But it's not the same, right?
And I will say, just to add on to what Bill said,
Sorry, we're recording, that's why we need the mic. Sorry, 'cause a lot of kids can't come tonight.
you know, we do ask for opinions. We've done taste testings last year and this year. Now that the whole COVID thing is kind of dispersed, we were able to do that a little bit more. But we have taste testings in the schools. We do go out, we ask for input. Like Bill said, the more specific the input, the better. But we have heard you. We got rid of the lasagna because everybody was like, oh, lasagna. We replaced it with mozzarella sticks. I fought that for so long because I was like, cheese sticks can't be a lunch, but the kids love it, So we do look at adding items to the menu. What else did we add this year? We did taste testings on, but I can't remember what else we replaced. Well,
So what happens with tastings is we'll bring a vendor in and we'll try to decide if we want their product or not. First, it has to kind of pass our taste test. There's some things that I just wouldn't present. And then we select schools and did it. Now, we tested the jalapeno cheese sticks at North Point. And is there a representative from North Point here?
Davis, you were at
Right.
Davis.
Did you get any? Yeah, how was it? How was it? I liked it. So we're gonna bring that item onto the menu in the January timeframe. But if we change an item, it's not as easy as going to the grocery store and getting something. Okay? Because when we go and buy mozzarella cheese sticks, you go to the grocery store, you buy a package with 24 in it. I go to my supplier and I say, I need 1,000 cases next week. It's not something they can do overnight. So there's a planning cycle that gets involved there. So we tested those cheese sticks. It's going to take till January to have them into our supplier and distributed back out to the schools. All these things you've heard on the news for the last 18 months or so about supply chain issues, every one of them affects almost every item on our menu, okay? We have the same problems as the rest of the system has. We can't get enough staff. There's just not enough people willing to work right now. I don't want to get into the political end of things, right? But I was very reassured to hear many of the board members say one of the things you had to learn is you can't please everybody. We serve 24,000 meals today. 24,000 meals. If we got 99.9% of those right, it means there are about 250 people that didn't like it. That's the reality of what we have to deal with. We do our best, and there's lots of other little things that you don't need to worry about. What you need to worry about is there something there that I want to eat? Now, as the father of 4 and grandfather of 12, I can tell you, I got to make sure my Social Security check clears. But I can tell you that there have been more than one time when my wife has gone out and spent several $100s at the grocery store for my teenage son to walk in the door and go, there's never anything to eat in this house. So what we offer that day might not be what you want, but we do the best we can with what we have. You all know there's a national shortage of lettuce right now, right? It's because of the crop harvest in California, the rain and the drought. So these things affect things, but they don't affect you right away, okay? And we do the best we can. So your salads haven't looked the best, but it's what we could get our hands on for right now. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
and to his point, if you have specific things, that's for everyone, tell your people at your school and bring it back and possibly take action on it. we need to wrap things up because we need to move the room around. Mayor, if you could, provide the rest of your questions, and we'll make sure that we answer them. I will tell you that you had a question about the dress code. I will tell you that and Mr. Hancock will be with the next board. I will certainly bring that to that board's attention. That's something that we'd actually started looking at just prior to COVID. A group was formed, and then COVID came and things just kind of waned. But I'll make sure that gets the attention of. Well, you'll be there as well, so you can bring that. That's right. That's right. Yes.
What if you have a question about sexual assault in Charles County schools?
You have a question?
Yeah, you said you have that yourself. So I just have a question. A
Oh,
quick question,
wait.
if you don't mind.
Let me just.
Sorry.
No. Is this a generic question or about something specific?
No, it's just how you guys put better put policies in. It can be a generic question because I do have personal experience, but Charles County does have a lot of instances of sexual assault, and I'll read the student handbook and everything. It doesn't really mention sexual assault and everything. I thought sexual assault in Charles County schools, especially middle schools and high schools, is so normalized and it happens so much, and I feel like if we lack accountability from the board and from our teachers and everything, we couldn't face the schools with children's safety and their bodies and everything.
So I would ask the superintendent to respond to that in terms of, you say there's no policies in place.
Curious.
Yeah.
To respond to policies in
Yeah.
place regarding sexual assault. So I think there's a couple of things that we can do. We can have a conversation afterwards so that I can understand a little bit more about your topic. And then more important, if there's specific conversation that you want to ask the board, we can go through Amira. Amira is collecting all the other questions, and we'll make sure that the board members respond back. I'm also happy with my staff to follow up with you specifically if there's a specific incident that you want to talk about or in general, so that we follow up. And I know that we will follow up with questions that arise, and Amira is your conduit to the board because she is a board member to ask questions. The other thing that I will remind students of is the board is structured to have public forum. And that is an opportunity for the public to come in and raise concerns or issues to the board. There's a process that we follow. I can talk to you about that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out, and we can certainly do this next school year. Again, I think the new board would welcome this opportunity as well. So just want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you, board members.
Thank you.